Staying. I'm Tan Tan Hao. I'm a playwright, children's novelist, arts activist with the group called Arts Engage, and also an occasional blogger. So before we go into, oh, this is very loud, right? Okay. Before we go into the discussion, panel discussion proper, I will do brief introductions of the speakers. Which I pulled from the web on the way here. Even though I know, of course, all three. Chris, Scott's one of our famous radio DJs, musician, writer.
Actually, I should add that I'm a non-musician. I don't play any musical instrument. I did play for one particular album, the guitar, but after the album was done, now I can't play anymore.
Chris is now DJing for Gold. Yeah, 5 to 7 every 5 to 8 every evening, right? And his pop columnist, and he's interviewed Mick Jagger, David Bowie, Tina Turner, Duran Duran, Banana Rama, Kylie Minogue, etc. Long list here. Nirvana as well. Wow, okay. He was in one of the iconic bands of Singapore, the Coin Lounge, right, in the 80s. And his album is called Punk, Monk, Hunk. And there's a biopic which came out last year, yeah, of him, of a very, I suppose, titillating final shot, I guess, yeah. I haven't seen the film, but my wife did, and she said it's really good, yeah. And of course, Martin, one of the pioneers of, I suppose, rebellious films in Singapore. Started as a genre, I guess. But, you know, many people don't know that he's a feature editor for local films like Mee Pok Man, 1984 with Eric Khoo, with Jack Neo, Pin Pin, Money No Enough Too. And interest for us here is because he made a 26-minute documentary film, Singapore Rebel, about Chee Soon Juan. And was banned, right? Was banned. Then immediately somebody put it up on the net, and one of the questions about the effectiveness of banning films, of film censorship, right? He also made Zahari's 17 years on the late political prisoner Said Zahari. Spent 17 years in detention without trial, and also banned. Then Dr. Lim Hock Siew, Dr. Lim Hock Siew, also banned. You probably had the most banned films in Singapore. Maybe next year we can give an award, right? Silan, of course, well known as well, and recently he performed in Speaker's Corner, and then in front of City Hall, and in front of the Parliament House, and was arrested, investigated. Case is still pending. A human rights activist. He served a 12-day prison term for taking part in the Boleh Tahan protests in 1908, outside Parliament House as well. You go there quite often, Silan. And then also for his protest in 2010 with 10 other people, right? Yeah, and produced One Nation Under Lee, which the film classification refused to classify, and one of the reasons is it contains excerpts from his film. So we are all intimately linked, very incestuous here. So with that, I will hand it over to you guys. Talk about 3 to 5 minutes about what you think is the state of film censorship and other kinds of censorship, music censorship. Yeah. Tattoo censorship on TV. Smoking censorship on TV. Okay, I don't know what else. Okay, Chris? Yeah, three minutes. Yeah.
Actually, something happened, uncannily happened today on the way here, which underscores this whole topic of censorship, for me at least. I was in an Uber, and it was tuned to 1FM 91.3, and suddenly I heard Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And for a long time, that song was officially banned in Singapore. But these days, they don't talk about what's banned because with the internet, it seems a bit pointless to highlight a ban. But the minute I heard it, I sent it to my group chat with Gold 905, the company, the station, and the music director said, we went on a conversation, then I said, if they can play it, why can't we? Because he told me before that we can't play the song. So that was the question that I put forth. And then he individually messaged me saying, you want me to get into trouble, is it? And he said, I'll talk to you tomorrow about this. And then I said, there is something I want to talk to you about in relation to this as well, 1993. This sounds to me like something that is being repeated in Singapore, because back in 1993, there was one song that MediaCorp radio station didn't play, and that was Boy George's Bow Down Mister, because of the line about eating the sacred cow. And right up till then, apart from the official ban lists of songs coming from the ministry, MediaCorp had their own volumes and volumes and volumes of restricted songs. They're not officially banned, but they were restricted from airplay on radio, just to make sure that nobody complained. And because at the time Boy George was coming to Singapore, so Heart 91.3 started playing Bow Down Mister. And I remember there was a new guy who came into radio at the time. He was like the AVP, Assistant Vice President. And he suddenly turned around and he asked, why is 91.3 playing Bow Down Mister when we can't play it? And they said, oh, because it's in our restricted volumes. And he said it didn't make any sense. And because of this one guy who was ready to stand up for it, the restricted volumes, the volumes of restricted songs were finally thrown out the window. So after that, there was no more of these volumes. But suddenly today, it occurred to me that that whole system is back again. And why? It's only because people are just afraid and they're just covering their tracks. Because it doesn't make sense to me, if one radio station is playing it, why can't the other radio station play it? And they believe that it's against the rule to play it, or they're trying to cover their tracks because they're afraid that someone will complain. And I think that is a problem with censorship here in Singapore, and that is we're basically more like practicing self-censorship in order to cover our tracks. It's not that it's written in black and white or anything, and I think that's a sad state, that we're going back to 1993 after all these years. Yeah, that's what I want to say.
There are 3 levels of censorship in Singapore. The first level is the law, that's very obvious. Sedition Act, Contempt of Court Act, Films Act. Second level are the subsidiary regulations that most of you don't know about. For example, NAC would not give funding to a comic book that talks about the political opposition in Singapore, as we've happened with Sunny Liu. MDA will not support a film that has more than 50% of Chinese dialects. These are the subsidiary regulations. And then the third one is the most devious one that all of us are guilty of, which is self-censorship. I go back to the first one, right, the law. And pertaining to our discussion today, Section 33 of the Films Act basically bans political films that references, that are biased, whether you're talking about political subject matter or a political person. Any film that are biased, that talks about a political film, a political person or subject matter in a biased manner will be not just banned, but criminalized, which is what happened to me when I made the Ji Sun Juan film. I was under police investigation for 18 months. Now, some of you watched the 9 films that were shown just a while ago. The 10th film, Behind the Man, was made by Tay Bin Pin about Ji Sun Juan again. Now, we were unable to show that film because the MDA required that film to be resubmitted under a different category called political films. And if MDA had decided that that film was a political film, what would happen to me 10 years ago with my first children film would happen to Bipin. Bipin would have been called up by the police. So we spoke to Bipin, and Bipin decided to withdraw the film. But thankfully, the film had already gone viral in 2015 when he released it during the by-elections of Bukit Batok. Yeah, that's my intro for now.
Yeah, I guess in my case, One Nation Under Lee was made a long time ago. Of course, you know, primarily I'm a visual artist and I do performance art once in a while. But when I made that film, it wasn't meant to be one of my artworks at all. Because I saw a lot of propaganda as a young Singaporean. I saw a lot of propaganda fed towards me, and I wanted to consciously create counter-propaganda. So the film is counter-propaganda. It gives you instructions on what to do at the end. It tells you, it recommends civil disobedience as a means to challenge this oppressive hegemonic state. So just to make that clear. And as we were screening it, we did a private screening, and I think about 100 people came, and it was all private. There was no, you know, Facebook wasn't even popular then, and somehow the police found out. They came to the screening, and then they wanted to barge in and take the equipment and take the film and conduct some investigation. So what we did was we held them off at the door and literally just kind of holding the door and talking to them. One group's holding the door, the other group is talking while the film is still screening, and people don't know, the audience don't know that the police are outside. And then we finish the film, and they come in. As they come in, we know they want the projector, and they want the disc. So the first thing we do is we take the projector, and we smuggle down the chairs. And the projector was out of the room. This is, 10 years has passed. I don't care if they know now. But they didn't get the projector. And they didn't get the laptop it was screened on. So yeah, these are the things that happened. But at the same time, on the same day, while we were screening it, it was already being uploaded to YouTube. So too bad. And and up till now, I think a few 100,000 people have viewed it. And in fact, Freedom Film Festival, it was banned in Singapore. So after that, I was investigated, and then the Straits Times said that this film is illegal. Anyone found with a single copy of it will be fined $500 per copy. And then it went to the censorship board, and the police asked me to submit it to the censorship board, and I did. And in the end, it was left unclassified. They said they cannot classify the film because a clip from Martin C's banned film is in it. So thanks, man. But it's already online and people are watching. And today the landscape is very different, right? People upload films all the time, videos, whether critical or not. But coming back to why I do those things, I don't really think about the mechanism of the state or how I'm supposed to react in contrast to that or accordingly to that. For me, the most important thing is the practice of art. That is all. As long as the art is made, then that is my goal. The consequences, it's up to them. It is up to the state or whoever wants the authority to decide what they want to do with the art. Yeah, to me, art is above the law. It is not above humanity, but it is above the law because laws can be unjust, and unjust laws should be broken. Art is unstoppable. Thank you.
Just a note. One Nation Under Lee. If you Google it, you will search for. You will have the result of 3 videos. The first one is, of course, the film, One Nation Under Lee, and then the second and third video is the documentation of how the police raided the screening. It was done by the Online Citizen back then, and it's still online. This is the second and third one is more fascinating than the film itself, actually. Yeah.
This is the first time I heard the Projector story, and it's really clever of you guys. Just now I was just talking to somebody in the audience who has been investigated, and her laptop has been with the police for the last, since January. Yeah, so they do that, and then they make it difficult. Roy Peruma investigated for being too loud during his busking For last 8 months, he under travel restrictions, he almost couldn't go to the United States, and then you get all this thing on you, and you know, he doesn't know what charge he is being investigated for even. Yeah. Okay. Questions? Okay, then you can go for dinner. Ah. Yeah. So you mentioned YouTube and Google. Are these the ways of getting around censorship? And then, so does censorship work? And then are there other ways? Is that your question? Okay, right.
The law is very unclear on the uploading of political videos on YouTube and Google and other such video platforms. When my film Dr. Lim Hock Siew was banned, that was the only time when NDA told me to take down the film off the internet. When I was undergoing police investigation for previous banned films, they didn't ask me to do that. So the law is quite unclear on that. But my advice is, you want to make a political film, just upload it on the internet. It should be fine. It should be fine. I think that, barring a case in the last elections when MDA told the SDP opposition party to take down one of their campaign videos. Other than that, I've not come across any case where the government has stepped in and demanded that videos be taken down. Yeah.
Well, I think it's quite clear that when it comes to so-called political films in Singapore, anything is fine as long as you're not critical of the government. So if you do a political film and it's not critical about the PAP, it is absolutely fine, as we all know.
Yeah, I don't think about censorship. Censorship is what they want to do as a reaction to what I made and what I create. So censorship doesn't affect me.
And the anonymity of the internet, YouTube, is such that if you send your film to other people before it goes through the censorship process, other people can upload it and anonymously, and then once out there, it's pretty hard to bring it down. Do you think that there are other, okay, the film may be accessible, but are there other negative effects, such as the fact that once it's labeled as a ban or you know, not allow all ratings, which is Tan Binh Bien's to Singapore with Love, it is that you cannot use it as educational material in the schools, right? So if the song is banned, you know, I used to be an English teacher, and one of the techniques of teaching English is you use a pop song, and then, right? But you can't use a pop song to Puff the Magic Dragon because it is banned. So do you think that that effect is that a lot of the educational users of the films that you make actually has been denied because teachers cannot use it, cannot discuss it?
I've heard of cases where one academic told me that he did screen some of my banned films to his students privately in his lecture room. So I think it's really up to the educators to take that step to screen it. It's on YouTube anyway, right? It's public domain. So again, the law is very unclear on that. If you play a banned film on YouTube to a group of people, is that considered illegal or not? So again, the law is very unclear on it. And it's purposely unclear because they want to catch you when they want to catch you. If they don't like your face, you know, you lose your job, you lose your license, you lose your grant. Things like that can happen. Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it's also up to the academic institution involved. I dare say that I made some short films, and I've never tried showing them in Singapore, with the exception of one that was called Blow Job, and the rest. The rest, I made them for overseas, but they have been shown in Singapore, I think, like the SMU and places like these, and LaSalle as well, I think because the teacher, the instructor requested for a screening. So I think because he requested for a screening, so I was exempted from the censorship procedure. So it depends really on the institution and who's in charge.
So you can get around by private screening. Yeah. Any other questions? Comments too? Paul? Paul
Question, yeah, just wondering, you know, in the light of Sunny Liu's tremendous success and also Jeremy Tiang doing really well, do you think now it's a good idea to try and court censorship for box office success? I'd just be interested to hear what the views of the panel.
Extremely good question.
No, we should never think that way. As artists, we should never think that way. Our work has to be pure, all right? No courting of anything, all right?
I totally disagree. If you want fame, controversy, you want your name out there in the lights, make something controversial. Make sure MDA or NAC say something about it. There you go. People will watch it. You make art to communicate, right? You want an audience. No? Okay. He's purist, I'm not. I'm very pragmatic. Filmmaker, right? You want to make films so that you want to reach to as many people as possible because you think that the message is important. So that's my point. So yes, I agree with Paul there. If if MDA or NAC wants to highlight your film for any sort of negative reason, use that publicity to further publicize it internationally. By all means, I encourage it.
Yeah, so the two questions arising from there: if it's not to communicate, what is it? Art. And then why didn't you bother? I mean.
Because I'm very old school. I'm very fearful, actually, right. Despite what I display sometimes. Yeah, because I didn't want to subject myself to the censorship in Singapore. And when I was finally approached to do a short film for the Singapore International Film Festival, I completely condescended by doing something that I know that the censorship board would not object to, even though it was called Blowjob. So, yeah.
So you are very safe in Singapore.
So in that sense, I'm right in between them. He's a purist, and he's a marketeer, and I'm somewhere in between that, like, get away with it if you can. If you can't, don't do.
So what are the other films about? Can you just tell us that you think that will not pass, that you made?
Oh, okay. The first film was a tribute to John Waters called Divine Vengeance, where this guy was being wanked off by a transvestite, and the spunk fell almost onto a Singapore map. The second film was called My Demon Brother, which was like a tribute to Kenneth Anger, and it had a ritual whereby the guys were praying to this effigy or sign that says LK Lucifer King. The third film is called Blowjob, which was actually a tribute to Andy Warhol's Blowjob. And the fourth film was my most traveled. It's called Allen Ginsberg Gives Great Head. It was very, very explicit. And the fourth film was called Sex by Nationality. And the sixth, no, sorry, that's the fifth. The sixth film was called Come Suck My Nazi. It was the most hardcore explicit.
Being very conservative, I think we should even ban his descriptions of his films, much less the... So what do you think art is about?
Oh, art is... Okay, art is just self-expression, that's all. All right? Whatever happens with the expression is not up to you. Your job is to create. You know, your job is not to market or play into government policy or change yourself or your work because of some law or some regulation. Yeah, just create and the rest will follow.
Art is creation, but more importantly, note your motivation for creating the art. I think there are three types of motivation when a filmmaker makes a film. Number one, he wants fame. He wants red carpet. He wants to attend festivals. He wants his name in the lights. You know, a lot of filmmakers don't like to admit it, but they do that for that reason. Second reason, the Jack Neo kind, make money, right? Make money for making films. That's where the Hollywood comes in and all that. Third reason is the most pure one, is the sealant reason. Make films because you have something to say. You want people to hear it. Yeah, so there's three motivations for film, as well as I think you can apply to any kind of art form.
If I have a footnote about all that, if you're a young student or aspiring artist, I think now is a really good time in Singapore to get started because, you know, there's a great emphasis on the young and grooming the young people in the arts. And I think you can really get away with a lot, even if you're not pro-PAP. As long as you sound a little bit critical but not overly critical, you'll get very far. And I think while courting controversy, it will be a wonderful stepping stone for you. Because why? Because you're young. You know, the government will look up to you, will groom you, will want to groom you. I think if you're young and you are starting out, it's a wonderful time.
But not Amos Yee, though.
He was over. That's what I mean by over. And I think the sad thing about Amos Yee is that people are so critical about him. What are they expecting? Are they expecting a saint?
Okay.
So how do we actually persuade, I guess, a lot of the Singapore electorate or populace to really be a bit more concerned about such? Because I guess my take is that it's probably apathy, right? That there are stringent censorship laws, but people either agree or don't really care. So I guess do you have any ideas on how to, I guess, change the current situation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it is in a way a follow-up to the question that I think we discussed that I thought we should bring up. You know, we can complain, right? We have been complaining for years, right? But what can we do to change things, if at all, right? Or is complaining just fun enough?
Okay, again, I have to say, this thing about complaining is not us. The culture of complaint is created by them. So it's nothing to do with us. We don't want to complain, but it's been inculcated into us. So it's not our fault that we complain. They want us to complain. So, and in that sense, I don't think there's anything we can do. I think only observing from that macro level, and I don't think they would really respond to what we want, if you ask me.
This is a perennial question, the $1 million question that everyone asks, right? How do we make change? How do we convince people to make a change? And this morning, I came across this video, which I totally agree with, and it's on my latest Facebook update. It basically says that you cannot change a person's mind by presenting facts. It doesn't work. You change a person's mind by changing his feelings. It's like wooing a girl. You can tell the girl how wonderful you are, the girl won't believe it. But over time, you talk to her, you show her that you care, then people will be convinced to come around to your views. So, and that needs time, and a lot of us don't have time because we're so busy working, trying to pay for our mortgage. And this is the entire system that makes us work until we can't retire, even when we are 70, because our CPF gets locked up. It's an intelligent, sophisticated system. Changing needs time, it needs patience, it needs compassion, and most importantly, empathy. Yeah, and the best authoritarian regimes in all the world would do the single thing that would keep them in power, which is divide and conquer. They'll divide one group against the other, which Trump is perfectly expert in doing that kind of thing. And so is the PAP, to divide us against them. Yeah, and to create a culture of fear whereby we become suspicious of each other. You know, then that's where you begin to lose empathy, and that's where change is almost impossible. You might as well just migrate or live in Dribi. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. First of all, so the last performance, right? The second last performance, 32 years, the interrogation of Mirror. Okay, when I decided to do the work, it's because I was turning 32 years old, and Chia Tai Po was detained for 32 years old, and it is that reality that I could not reconcile, and that is why I created the work. Not because I had an idea that people have to know about Chia Tai Po, or the government is going to do something, or people are going to do something. No, none of that. I had a personal reason to do the work, and I had to do it this year. All right, and after it was performed, after it was done, I was arrested, and then I was brought to the Cantonment Police HQ, and that night at 11:30 p.m., The lights were on all the time. They didn't switch off the lights. But I asked the guard, it was 11:30, and suddenly I just woke up and I just stood up in my cell and I just laughed. I just laughed really loud, okay? And I just said to myself, you know, it doesn't matter that I'm here. It doesn't matter whatever happened. I finished the work. That's all that matters, you see? And the next day, after I was out on bail, I was sitting around with a group of people who came to receive me. And they told me that the Straits Times article about the performance was half of it was about my performance, and the other half of it was actually about Dr. Chia Tai Po, who he was an MP, he was detained for what reason, for 32 years, and so on. So I just, and I didn't think about it, but I just instinctively told them, well, it's worth it then. Yeah, everything is worth it. But did I strategize for this kind of change? No. All I did was do what I need to do. And then change might happen, it may not, but I think the most important thing is to change yourself before changing others.
Okay. I've got a question for you. Okay, you ask.
The thing about strategy, I have to disagree with Seelan because not everyone is courageous like him. You have to strategize, I'm sorry, because you have to know the laws that are in place. You have to circumvent the law, and you have brave enough, take the law head on, but then you have to be brave enough to face the police in a police investigation. You have to be brave enough to even go to jail or pay a fine. You have to strategize. Seelan is one of a kind, really. I mean, he feels like doing it, he just go and do it. But I'm advising all of you to strategize because the law can catch us in a lot of ways, And when you get caught, what happens is you will start to blame people. Oh, why didn't you tell me about it? Oh, and then you start to isolate yourself. And then you start to capitulate to their demands. You start to self-censor yourself. You start to apologize. So it's good to strategize.
I don't know if I can actually ask this question since you're still under investigation. But I mean, with the last piece of work that you did, I'm sure you anticipated being arrested. Wasn't that strategizing?
No, you see, the work was supposed to end at 5 p.m., all right? The last drawing was made outside Parliament House, the drawings on the mirror, yeah? Hong Lim Park, National Gallery, and Parliament House. So the last drawing was made facing the Parliament House, and the idea was that if at 5 p.m. I'm not arrested, then I take the work, I initial on it, I complete the drawing, then I walk home, right? So it is up to the state to participate in the work or not, and they arrested me at 4:15 p.m. They participate and they finish the work, you see? So, so that is a part of the process.
Fucking hell, they played into your hands.
So in summary, if you want change, strategize and don't listen to me.
If you are planning to be naughty, I suggest you read Martin's blog because and try to get his phone number. So if you are arrested, because his blog has quite good practical tips about what happens if you're arrested, what the powers you have, can you bring your mother, can you take notes, investigation. So in fact, I suggested at one time, Martin, a group of us to get together and put a little naughty Singaporean guidebook where we meet the law, right? But it hasn't materialized yet. Any other questions? We have how many more minutes? Last question. Okay. Yep.
It's a very interesting discussion about self-censorship. And self-censorship, this is a more comment, it's actually a disease. Very sadly, it's a disease that especially breeds in authoritarian regimes. My name is Kenneth Sang. I was one of those who was arrested under the Marxist conspiracy. And just listening to all of you, the three of you speak up about censorship and, really, at the end of the day, we really must stand up for what we really believe in and what we really feel. Because there's really no way out. You can strategize all you want, like what Martin says, but in the end, I think you will simply just put walls around yourself. So ultimately, I think, I think we all have a line, and I think, it comes a point where we say, enough is enough.
Yeah. Okay. Just back. But are you advocating self-censorship? Each one of you? I mean, Kenneth, you seem to say that they are. No, I don't think that is fine. Oh, okay. Sorry, He's saying don't do. Yeah, yeah. Okay, right. So we all agree. Yeah, agree. Oh, agree. Yeah, we agree with you. Yeah. Okay.
Theoretically, I agree, but because I'm a chicken shit rebel, so I self-censor proudly.
Yeah, you make those films about show it elsewhere.
Whether you're Chris Ho and you self-censor and you admit it, then you self-censor and don't admit it. Yeah.
Thanks for coming. And back to you, Silan. Thank you. Thanks.